crafting friends, Jessica here with Tiny Worlds of Wonder. I thought today, since I've had such a busy week and I have made zero progress on my diamond painting, that I might stop in and just do a quick coloring tutorial with you guys. I haven't done a lot of coloring lately and I really have been missing it lately. So I thought maybe we'd jump into something together here today. Maybe this could turn into a series, maybe not, depending on the feedback that I get from you. But today I thought I might stop in and do a quick tutorial about Prismacolor pencils because I see a lot of people using them on my Instagram universe. And I think they're actually quite difficult to master. And I am by no means a master or an expert, but I thought today I would just stop in and share some of the things I've learned along the way about Prismacolors and how they work. I really do love them. I find them extremely slow, so I don't use them on every project. But the thing I love most about them is that you can really get beautiful, vibrant colors with them. I tend to color, everyone has their own coloring style, I've really found. But my style tends to be really saturated and bright. And so I can always get that really rich color with my Prismacolors that I sometimes struggle to get with a less expensive pencil. So this is an example of a page that I did from Imagimorphia by Kerby Rosanes. I've shown this in other videos, but I think it's a great example of that pop of color you can really get with Prismas and how much fun they can be. So I thought today we would do a little coloring together, and I might show you how I start on a brand new page completely untouched, which I think is frankly the most intimidating thing. Just getting started can be really intimidating. This is the beautiful book Menhuet de Bonheur by Kanoko Egusa. Kanoko was kind enough to give me permission to show you this book today, as was Kerby Rosanes. He gave permission as well for me to show that page. So I'm super excited to share this with you. Check in the description below for a link to Kanoko's website, and if I can find a link to this book, if it's still available in the US, I'll put that down in the description as well. But just, I'm going to give, I'm sorry, a rather lengthy introduction here because I really think all the things I'm going to tell you are important when you're getting started with Prismas. So I have, let me grab my lid here. I have the 132 tin of Prismacolors, but I have to say Prismacolors are so blendable that I think you could actually start with a much smaller set than I did and still get a really good result with your coloring. And I'm going to work on some blending tips here today too to hopefully help you maximize the pencils you do have and help them go a little bit farther. So my first tip for using Prismacolors is really a tip for all coloring, and that is to start observing the world around you, maybe in ways that you never have before. Watch how the light hits objects in your world. Watch how different kinds of light have different colors and different tones to them. That is really going to change the way that you see your coloring pages and your artwork. It's such a handy tip. And once you start seeing those variations in color, you can't unsee them anymore. So it's really, really important to become an observer of your world if you want to be a halfway decent colorist. I kind of feel like coloring should be fun, so I don't know that it's about quality, but rather about the journey itself. But that is one tip that I have really used a lot and has helped me a lot. Another thing that's helped me a lot is to use reference photos when I'm first starting out. So today we're going to be coloring actually the cover page, a little bit on the cover page of this beautiful book. And so before we started, I actually looked up some reference pictures of macaroons, because that's the part of the page I'm going to be working on here, just so I could see the texture, how the light falls on those objects. And if you look at different photos in sort of different lighting, you'll get an idea of where the creases live, where the lights and shadows are, and I find that to be really helpful. The next tip when you're starting out might be to generalize your color theme for the whole page. So on this beautiful page, like I said, white paper can be the most intimidating thing to start with, but one thing I'm thinking of here as I open this page is a really pastel color scheme. I'm going to use, this just came to mind, and I haven't, on purpose, I haven't really looked at other versions of this page colored yet, because I sort of want this to be my own take on the page, but I'm thinking a very spring-like and pastel theme would fit this really well, of course, because it's got bunnies and ducklings on it. That's kind of a no-brainer. But I'm thinking sort of a violet purple macaroon over here, which might contrast well with some blue purples that I put up in the cupcake here, the blackberry that's hanging out over here. It could be a raspberry, but I might make it a blackberry. Probably some pink peonies or roses, a reddish pink to the strawberries, and probably like a turquoise, light turquoise and pink combo in the china here. So when I'm starting to lay out a page, I sometimes think about the general scheme of colors I want to use and how I might complement those colors throughout the page. So I don't want to have maybe just, if I want my purple macaroon to be a really big focal point on my page, that might be the only purple thing that I put on here, and I might make it really bright. But if I want this to sort of have a cohesive feel, like these items all belong together, I might find some other places where I can use that same color scheme and just sort of balance the symmetry of the work out with my colors. Okay, so let's actually get started here. Through my observation of macaroons in the world, I know that they're quite shiny. I think the light source for this piece is going to be pretty much full on from the front because I don't see any reason for it not to be. I can see where Kanoko Egusa has put some shading in here, so I might use that as sort of a reference as well. We've got some we've got some shadow around the edges of the strawberry here, which means probably the light source comes from full in the front. Same here, same with our spoon. So at least that's the way my eye is seeing this. Like I said, I don't know that there's truly any right or wrong answer. So if you'd like to color along with me on this page, if you own this book or something similar, the colors that I'm going to be using are, let's see, I'll go from lightest to darkest. PC 1026, which is grade lavender. PC 956, lilac. PC 1008, which is Parma violet. And if I need some dark shadows, I'm not sure I will, I'll use PC 996, which is black grape. What I did to choose these colors was literally get a piece of paper and swatch them out and look for combos that I liked. I don't think there's any magic formula for that. You can check your Prismacolor color guide if that's helpful to sort of get in the right color range, but the experimentation really is how I do it. All right, let me grab my sharpener out, which I keep in a really low-tech sandwich bag because it tends to leak shavings all over the place. Now, Prismacolors are notorious for breaking, so one thing I find helpful is to put it in, twist, pull it out like that. That way I get a little less breakage on my tips. And I find starting with a really, really sharp pencil is really helpful. Okay. So I'm just going to get these a tiny bit pointier. I haven't used a lot of these too much, so they're not too dull. All right, I might drop you in a little closer to this. My hands are going to be in the way because of my angle no matter what I do, but let me drop you in, I'll be right back. All right, the first thing I do when I'm starting an object is to block in lightly my various color values. So I'm going to start with my shadowed areas first, which is going to be sort of the edge. My eye sees sort of this front edge as being quite light, and I'm never afraid to leave white space when I'm first starting out. So I'm going to lay in some light color values here in the front, and of course the spoon is going to cast a little bit of a shadow, but we're going to deal with that a little later. So I'm going to hit sort of my front edge of my macaroon with my lightest shade. Now remember too, it's always an option to leave things white. A lot of times if you have a very strong light source, the light that hits your object is actually white at some point. So that's something to keep in mind too. Now I'm going to keep my layers extremely light at first, and I'm going to start coming in with my next color. I'm going to go kind of part way back here around the edge. And these, when I'm first laying in my colors, I don't worry about things being too smooth. Really what I'm doing is giving my eye sort of a guide so that as I start to envision this object in my mind's eye, I know if I'm on the right track or not, basically, with where my shadows are going to go. And once you become an observer of the world, I feel like your eye starts to see whether you sort of have it right or not. So I'm going to create some shadow here around the edges. Now I know macaroons have sort of that little edge where each cookie must sit in a little pan or something, and I'm actually going to make that, even in my lighter areas, a little bit darker than the rest of the cookie itself. I will let some light hit the front here, then I'll come in with some shadow. And like I said, I'm just working in light layers at first. Now another great thing about Prisma is if you feel like you've gone a little too far into your lightest area with your darker color, you can do a little bit of erasing too, provided that you have a clean eraser. That's what I'm checking on here while my hands are doing nothing. I think I want to back off that darker color just a little bit. For now, I may come in and darken it back up again. Okay, now I'm going to take my third color. This is 1008, so I'm working from light to dark, and I'm going to start working even more shadow into the back. Because this is a fairly flat object, I think I'm going to keep the top fairly light and save my shadow for coming around the edges here. I'm going to have to deal with the spoon too and how that's going to affect everything. Okay, I'm going to work some darker color into sort of this edge. Kanoko has given us some black shadow lines, so that's something to work with. Okay. Don't like what I did there, so I'm just gonna get rid of that for now. Once you get a lot of layers of pencil on, you're not going to be able to erase anymore. But the value of sort of laying in your values first is that you do get a little bit, there's a little bit of forgiveness at the beginning. Okay. Now I think I may actually come in with a different purple for the filling in here now that I'm sort of seeing how all this might come together, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I took that out and now I might put it back in. Sometimes your eye just tells you to do things, and then you sort of doubt yourself, and then it's all a work in process. Now what I'm going to do is start going backwards. Okay, so I worked from light to dark, just blocking in sort of my values. Actually, before I move on to this, I might deal with the spoon situation. Now, because my light source is coming from the front, not from the side, I'm not going to get a big cast shadow off to the side of my spoon, but I might want to just bring in a little bit of something, just to acknowledge that that object exists there in front of my macaroon. We can't just ignore objects like they don't exist, right? They have to exist. If they're in front of what our main subject is, they're going to affect what's behind them, at least a little bit. All right, now I'm going to start working from my lighter shade to my darker shade. So I'm going backwards to the 956. I'm going to color over my darker color, working in light layers. And just blending out. The secret to Prismas, 100%, is to work in many multiple light layers. If you try to accomplish everything in one layer, while what you do might look just fine, you're not going to get the beautiful blended kind of feeling that you would get if you just have a little more patience and sort of blend those colors out a little bit. So I'm working with a very, very, very light hand. And does that require some patience? Yeah. Yeah, it does. Sometimes I struggle with that and I want to get it all done quickly. But that's not really where you get your best result. Definitely with Prismas, that's true. All right, I'm going to go back to my lightest color. And once I sort of get things started, sometimes I just stay in one little area and work on that, just because I find that a little bit easier. My pencil here is actually too sharp, and so it's wanting to be a little more bold than I want it to be. Sometimes if you get a really, really good tip on your pencil, you can get some streaky lines. So just roughing up the tip a little bit so you have at least one flat area to work with can be helpful. So I'm always going to blend over the colors that I've already laid down, the darker colors, with my lighter color. Make sure I have you in frame here. I always forget that my iPhone's camera is sort of off to the side, so everything is not quite as centered as I thought it was when I look at the screen. Okay, so again, this is my lightest color, the 1026. And I do want the front of this cookie to be pretty bright because macaroons are shiny. Shiny and delicious, oh my goodness. So delicious. All right, I think what I want to do now, I'm going to actually come in with some of this darkest color. This is 996, the black grape, because I think one secret to really bringing your coloring pages to life is to actually have enough contrast. So I just want to visualize some contrast here on the darkest areas. That's going to help me at this point, I think. So I'm going to leave the shadows on the front of my cookie maybe a little lighter than the edges, but I do want to have some definition here. You'll see once you start adding your lowlights, your shadows, that's when your coloring is really going to come to life. You're going to start to see something happen that's kind of magical, in my opinion anyway. I think a lot of people are sort of afraid of using too much dark shadow. But remember, that contrast is what really adds some life to your piece. Yeah, I'm sort of liking what's happening there. So I'm going to kind of micro focus on one little area over here. Once I sort of get something coming to life, it helps me to just sort of stay with it for a minute. Kind of get it where I want it to go, and then can sort of match what I did in my other areas. Now this paper, I have to say, is fine for coloring. I find that I can't get quite as many layers as I might like to, because it just doesn't have a lot of tooth to it. So I think there are definitely other coloring book papers that I'm more successful with my blending on than this one. But this is all right. Bring just a little more dark tone over to the edge here. And I just sort of go back and forth between my colors over and over. Until I start to get the effect that I want. All right, I'm going to add a little more dark tone over here. And every time you see me trade pencils, I'm going to either the next lighter color or the next darker color. That's always how we blend, of course. And you'll find putting the layer of your lightest color over the darker colors is really what'll get you there when it comes to the blending. All right. I go in with my darkest color just along the very back edge here, but not too much. Don't want too much to happen there. Probably seeing the light change all over my video. The sun is kind of bright and sunny here today, but the sun keeps disappearing and coming back, and it's making my lighting situation kind of challenging. All right, going backwards now to the next lighter color. I find I just sort of blend along the edge of what I just put down with the darker color, go over the darker color, and then sort of pull it back again. I went outside the lines, but I'm not going to worry about it. Life's too short to worry about coloring outside the lines. More shadow here. And then I'm just going to grab my lightest color and see what I can do about blending this back edge a little bit better. I find often that I have to step away from what I'm doing and come back to it and look with fresh eyes. And I think that's helpful to do sometimes. So I'll probably wrap the video up, come back, do some more tweaking to it, which of course I can't do on camera, but that's something that's helpful to me. Come back with a little darker color here. I might actually lighten that up just a bit. Just a bit. I feel like I got a bit too much color on this leading edge right here, which, because that's actually the brightest part of my cookie, I probably want, that's the leading edge, I probably want that to be the shiniest, the lightest in the whole cookie, right at the front. Then I think I probably want to match the whiteness here. Similarly in other sort of vertical areas. So take a little color off there. And what I might do, add just a little more of my darkest color. Sort of work backwards in this spot a bit. I always find that my thoughts about what I'm doing really develop quite a bit as I go. So trust your eye and what you're seeing as you go along. And if something's not quite right, if you're working in light layers, like you've seen me do a few times, you can sort of take some color away. And not feel like you've just wrecked the whole thing, you know? I don't think I could ever do my coloring sort of all in one pass and be happy with it, because my brain just doesn't work that way. I'm gonna work a little on my darkest shadow under the lip of this right here, but because this is really bright, I'm not gonna go too crazy with it. If you keep a light hand, you can always make what you've done work, more or less. Just blend that out a bit. I've gone over that section just a little bit with my lightest color, but I'm mostly going to leave that pretty bright, I think. Might come in where the spoon is. My eye is just telling me to do a little something more with that right here at the bottom. If you're an actual artist, my eye might not be right. I don't claim to be any expert, but I'm going to take just a little color off the bottom there. Okay. Now I think I'm going to come in with my darkest color. Work along here just a little bit. I decided to do this to sort of vocalize the whole process for you guys, because that is how I prefer to watch coloring tutorials. I know I have the option to do like a music overlay too, but I like to hear the process of some of these things being worked out in people's minds. I think it's interesting. So all right, and I'm working backwards. I always work either forward to the next lighter shade or backward to the next darker shade. So when you see me grabbing pencils again, that's what I'm doing. It's not a mystery. And I always sort of work out from the areas I've already done, I've already colored. And I just use little small, I basically color in small circles. It's more or less what I'm doing. And just take a moment to assess, see how you're feeling about it. I'm not totally happy with the blending up here, but like I said, this paper is maybe not quite as toothy as I wish it was. Now I know because I tend to color quite saturated that this may have the appearance of like a really bright light source in front of it. I just tend to color with a lot of contrast. That's sort of what I like. But of course, if you wanted to make this a little less contrasted and just a little bit more truly pastel, you could go with a little less shadow and a little less brightness. I feel like I got pencil on my page somehow. Fingerprints or something. Okay. Now I'm debating adding a little bit more of a red purple to the center of my filling here. Maybe this is like a purple cookie with sort of a raspberry filling. So I might grab my paper here and just swatch a couple colors out. I try not to go too crazy in blending too many blue purples and too many red purples all into the same piece. But sometimes you just need that. You need a little something else. Ooh, that's kind of a nice color. Dark purple. Like I said, this is really, I use basically just a process of testing. Testing and testing and testing. Seeing how these different colors interact with each other. That one's a bit too pink, I feel like. It's never an easy decision, is it? Yeah, I think I might go with a little bit of a pinker tone there. And again, these are more of like the red purple family of colors. Yeah, yeah, let's see how that goes. So I'm going to come in with a highlight that's a little bit pinker than my other highlight. This is 934 Lavender. Just going to work some of that in around the edges. And again, I'm using the exact same process. I'm laying in my values lightly first. I'm going to come in with, I need to give this one a little sharpen. This is Dahlia Purple 1009. And this is truly a more red purple. I think we needed that, just a little pop of life on this center part here. I think I'm going to keep the top edge of this fairly light and white, because again, I like to color with a pretty high contrast. Okay, and then I need to sharpen my dark purple 931. This one I've never ever used before. So I'm just using that. Oh. All right, I'm going to deepen up my shadows just with 931 a little bit. Like I said, I colored outside the lines in a lot of spots here. It's freeform coloring today. All right. Just because I already had some of this black grape around the edges, I feel like I need to blend that a little bit better. I'm going to go in with my lightest color. A little bit again there. Now I'm actually going to grab, am I thinking out loud here? I might actually test out. I'm going to test the option of going in with my lightest purple that I already had. I think that's a bit too, it's a bit too gray. Let's see if I can find a pink here. I do find sometimes that Prismas are so saturated that it's actually fairly challenging to get them really pastel. Maybe that's just for me. Maybe I'm a bit too heavy-handed or something. I might actually grab some white if I can find it. You guys get to see the real process here. No editing and no cheating. White can be something that it can be a color that you use if you don't really want to add any color, but you just sort of want to lay down the tooth on your paper in areas where you don't really want to add anything else. I'm going to come in and do that over here. That helped my blending quite a bit up in that area. I never use a blender pencil. I find that if I'm working in a lot of light layers that I don't need it. I basically never need it. So, but this white pencil trick can work if you just want to lay down some tooth on your paper. You know what I mean by tooth? Sort of the little white spots you get when your pencil isn't fully blended. Sort of lay down that tooth and give it a more finished appearance. I think I want a little more pink right in here. Just a little more brightness in the center there. Come back in with white. I'll just smooth that down a bit. All right, I'm always going to walk away and come back, probably tweak, you know, keep tweaking a bit. But I think I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. And like I said, I'm going to try to incorporate these colors somewhere else on my page so that this page has a feeling of cohesiveness when I'm finished. So I might bring these violets up into my blackberry here, possibly up into some flowers here or somewhere over here, just so I can kind of get the idea that this page really was planned out. So there we go. Like I said, I might fiddle with that a bit more, but I hope you found sort of seeing my process helpful, hearing my thought process. I know this was a bit long today. Like I said, there's no backing track with music, but I think it's helpful to sort of hear how people's thoughts are unfolding while they're doing this. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's video. As always, spread some joy wherever you are today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.